Simone, do you have any dreams? Pee Wee Herman, yeah, I'm all alone. I'm rolling a big donut and this snake wearing a vest. I think that about sets the tone for what I'm going for here. For what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about some dreams and nightmares. 5 of them to be exact, from different parts of my life. They are pretty uncanny, pretty strange, pretty surreal, like most dreams. But these are the ones that have stuck with me over the years. I'm going to start with my oldest one, and maybe the most important. First encounter with the Daemon. If you've watched some of my other storytelling videos, you know that my parents are divorced, but when I was a child, my mother was living in an apartment complex, and there was this courtyard. They were kind of like 3 buildings, in a U shape, and the courtyard was in the center. But I was asleep one night and I woke up because I heard like a tapping on the window, and there was this feeling like this had happened before. But I got up to tell my mother and I went into the hallway. I heard this tapping again and I came back, and at my window was this being with its hands up on the glass. And if you've seen the Twilight Zone episode, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, it was that being from that episode with William Shatner. So I'm not really certain if I saw the episode before having the dream or if it was a kind of premonition of the episode. I don't really know. I'm still not sure about this. I was very young. I was probably 6 or 7 or something. But the meaning of the dream has changed over the years, and it's mutated as I have changed and mutated. When I first had it, I just thought it was kind of a horrific dream. But as I got older, I realized that it was, I used to think that it was my daemon, like a oversoul spirit. And then now I'm not exactly sure, but that's what I used to think 10 or 15 years ago. The meaning of it will change, until I die. I don't really know. But it was a pretty strange dream. The second one I'm going to talk about is nuclear Armageddon. In my early 20s, there was a lot of fear about nuclear war. I mean, there still is to some degree, but at that time it was a very tangible thing. I lived with a woman in my early 20s, and I was in a very domestic situation with cats and all that kind of stuff. Well, in the dream, I woke up, there was breaking news that the Russians had launched nuclear weapons. So we didn't have a lot of time. Well, like many people, we panicked and we got in our car, seeing if we could get as far away from the city as possible before they actually impacted with Detroit. I remember in the dream we got on the expressway, and there were many other cars on the expressway, and they were all going, they were moving. As we got further out of the city, we ran into a traffic jam. And so, we're in the car with the cats and everything, and we're, panicking. And, I looked in the rearview mirror, and I could see the mushroom cloud hit Detroit. It was really strange because there was such a delay, or at least it felt like a delay in the dream. There was this bright flash of light, and basically I woke up after that. But pretty scary dream. The third one I call the Golem and the Farmhouse. So I had this one about 10 years ago. In the dream, I'm driving out to this farmhouse. It's kind of this Andrew Wyeth scene. I'll put some paintings on the screen so you understand what I'm talking about. But it was a very barren area, on the plains somewhere. Well, I had this ex-girlfriend, different one than the Armageddon dream. It was someone who meant a lot to me, and this was about 10 years before this dream we broke up. The relationship ended very, very badly. Over the years, I had a few dreams about this, perhaps because I never thought it got resolved properly. But in the dream, I go up to this house, this farmhouse. The door opens, and it's her, but she's been stitched up like a flesh golem or like Frankenstein. And the strange thing is I don't really think twice about this. The interaction starts off cordial, and we're kind of catching up and talking like you would an old friend or whatever. Then we start to bicker about a few things, and eventually we decide to go for a drive. It's a mistake because the drive turns into this big fight, about many of the things we used to fight about before. At the end of the fight, she takes her hand and she puts it through her chest. It's very strange. Then there's the woman in the Ivory Maze. I actually wrote about this in one of my books, but I'm in a shadowy maze built from ivory walls, and there are these endless passages, going in all these different directions. It is me as an adult, but I have a childlike soul, or, a childhood soul. And strangely, the soul inside of me is actually female, but they're trapped in this adult body. I want to get out of the maze, so I face it with determination. As I'm making my way through the maze, I come across a woman with her back to me, her kind of naked back. I creep closer to her to see if she knows a way out of the maze, slowly walking up to her. I don't want to scare her. And I tap her on the shoulder, and she turns partially to where 3/4 of her face is in the light. The final quarter is hidden in shadow. I move a little closer. I walk more, trying to get closer to her, but then it feels like a mile and more and more. And then suddenly she whirls around to show her true face. She's a beautiful woman, but she has a single deformed rabbit's ear coming out of her head, and it's kind of flopping around. She also wears a medallion around her neck, and as I look at the medallion, I see that it is 3 hares, rabbits, chasing each other in like a circle, and they are chasing each other's tails, and it's within a circular moon, like a full moon. And I'm spooked by her appearance, but she has this look like it's okay, and then she does one of these to me. Pretty strange dream too, I think. Then I have a more recent dream I call the flooded basement. So I am in this large basement that has about 2 feet of water in it. There are many people in the basement for some reason, and the people are kind of talking with each other and just sort of mingling around. I see this creep trying to talk to this child in kind of a creepy way. As a teacher, that kind of stuff bothers me. So I went to intervene. Well, I kind of shoo the guy away. I asked the child if her parents are around, and she doesn't know. And then I'm like, okay, well, we'll try to find them. As I'm doing this, her parents come down the stairs, and they see me talking to her, and they think that I'm a creep. So I'm trying to explain to them that I was helping her, and she's trying to explain, but they're not having any of it. The man is a doctor, and he pulls out this swab, and he wants to test me for STDs or something very strange. And I'm just like, no, I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to stick that in me. And it was just a really, really weird dream. And I actually had that recently. I had that maybe, 2 months ago, maybe. Well, as you can see, I've had some odd ones. There are many more. Not sure exactly what the lessons are, but I know that they've stuck with me, and I've thought about them from different angles. I think the really weird thing about dreams is they tend to change their meaning if time is allowed to go by, if you remember them. And so I have many more dreams, and some of them end up in my books or my poetry or whatever, but these are the ones I thought were the best to kind of tell as stories. But if you've had some crazy dreams, you can tell me about them below. I'd like to hear it. I'm always fascinated by dreams, and that's all I got. Take care. Have a good day.